I have lived long enough to know that the moments which change a man's life rarely announce themselves. They arrive quietly, a stranger's voice, a child's cry, a choice made in the space between heartbeats. And once you step toward that moment, there is no stepping back. I learned this on a desert trail, the summer I turned 53. The boy came out of the heat shimmer like something not quite real. Daniel Mercer pulled the reins. His mule stopped. The figure kept coming, small, stumbling, arms pumping against the empty sky. A child, running alone on a trail where no child should be. He reached for his canteen. The boy collapsed 10 feet away, face first into the dust. Daniel dismounted, his bad knee grinding as it always did, and knelt beside the small body. Deerskin moccasins worn through at the soles, ribs showing beneath a torn cotton shirt. Apache. The boy's hand shot up and grabbed Daniel's wrist, eyes wild, lips cracked and bleeding. "Shima," the boy rasped. "My mommy rock son bad men tie her." His voice broke into a sob. "Please, mister, she dying." If this story found you today, I would love to know where you are watching from. And if you have been enjoying these tales without subscribing, I kindly invite you to join our little community. It means more than you know. The boy pointed. Daniel followed the trembling finger toward a flat stretch of cracked earth where a dry creek bed snaked between two ridges. He saw her, a dark shape against a pale boulder, motionless. Vultures circled overhead. Patient, Daniel kicked the mule into a trot. The boy clung to his waist, whimpering something in Apache. The words meant nothing. The tone said everything. 50 yards, 30, 10. She was tied with hemp rope wrists lashed behind her, body slumped against the sun-bleached rock. Her calico dress had faded to the color of old bone, black hair matted with dust, head bowed. Dead, Daniel thought. Too late. Then her chest moved. Shallow, barely there. He swung down from the saddle, knee screaming, and pulled his folding knife from his belt. The boy scrambled past him, falling to his knees beside the woman. "Shima, Shima." Her head lifted, slowly, like it cost her something she could not afford. Eyes found the boy first, then moved to Daniel. Dark eyes, steady, no tears, no pleading. She watched him the way a cornered animal watches, calculating distance, measuring threat. Daniel knelt behind her. The rope had bitten deep into her wrists, skin torn, blood dried to black crust. He sawed at the hemp, blade catching on the fibers. The smell of dust and dried sweat hung thick in the air. "Easy now," he muttered. "Almost got it." The rope gave. Her arms fell forward. She did not cry out, though the pain must have been blinding. Instead, both hands swollen. Trembling, reached for the boy's face. Fingers traced his cheeks, his nose, his lips. Making sure he was real, Daniel uncorked his canteen and held it to her mouth. She drank, ran 3 swallows, stopped, pushed it toward the boy. "Him first," she said. Her voice was sand and gravel. Her English slow but clear. The boy drank. She watched him, and something in her shoulders loosened by a fraction. Daniel heard it, then hoofbeats, coming fast from the east. He turned. 4 riders crested the ridge, silhouettes black against the afternoon glare. They fanned out as they descended, cutting off the trail back to town. The lead rider wore a silver watch chain that caught the sun. He reined up 20 feet away and spat into the dust. "Mister," he said, "you just made yourself a problem." The man with the silver watch chain sat his horse like he owned the ground beneath it. Leather gloves creaked as he gripped the reins. Behind him, 3 riders fanned out 2 young, 1 gray-bearded, all armed. None had drawn. "Name's Harlan Cobb," the lead man said. "I speak for Sutter's Bend." Daniel stayed where he was, knife still in his hand. The woman had not moved. The boy pressed against her side, small fingers clutching the faded fabric of her dress. "You got a name, stranger." "Mercer, Daniel Mercer." Cobb nodded, like the name meant something, or nothing. "Well, Mr. Mercer, you just cut loose a prisoner. That woman was left here by lawful citizens of this town." Lawful. Daniel looked at the raw wounds on her wrists, at the sun-cracked lips, at the boy who could not have been more than 8 years old. "You tie up women and children where you come from." The boy ran. "We didn't tie him." Cobb shifted in his saddle. "The woman's different. She's a witch." The word hung in the air between them. One of the young riders, barely past 20, red-faced from the ride, nodded eagerly. The gray-bearded man said nothing, but his hand rested on his thigh, inches from his holster. "A witch," Daniel repeated. "Apache medicine woman." "Same thing." Cobb leaned forward. "Mrs. Patterson, wife of Tom Patterson. Good Christian woman, took sick 3 weeks back. Fever. Could not keep nothing down. Her husband heard this squaw knew remedies, so he brought her in." His jaw tightened. "Mrs. Patterson died 2 days later. That squaw was the last one to touch her." Daniel turned to the woman. She met his eyes without flinching. Dust coated her face, but beneath it, her features were sharp, intelligent. The face of someone who measured every word before speaking. "What did you give her?" he asked. "Willow bark," she said. Her voice was stronger now, though still rough. "In water. For fever. Same thing your people use." "Lies," the red-faced rider spat. "She poisoned her with—" "Shut your mouth, Billy." Cobb did not look back. His eyes stayed on Daniel. "What she gave don't matter. What matters is Mrs. Patterson's dead, and this woman was there when it happened. Folks need someone to answer for it." Daniel's grip tightened on the knife. He could feel the afternoon sun pressing down on his shoulders, soaking through his shirt. Sweat traced a line down his spine. "My mother used willow bark," he said. "Every winter when I was a boy. That ain't witchcraft. That's doctoring. Your mother wasn't Apache." "No, she wasn't." Daniel folded the knife and slipped it into his belt. "But she used the same medicine. So did half the women on the frontier before there were doctors to call." Cobb's expression did not change. "That's as may be. But this woman goes back to town. The preacher's going to decide what happens next. Trial, proper-like." "Trial?" Daniel looked at the rope marks on her wrists again. "That what you call tying a woman to a rock in the sun, waiting for her to die?" The gray-bearded man shifted. The young one named Billy looked away. Cobb's face hardened. "You don't know our ways, Mr. Mercer. You don't know what we've been through. That woman's been nothing but bad luck since she showed up. Cattle died. Wells went dry. Now Mrs. Patterson." He shook his head. "Sometimes the old remedies are the only ones that work. The old remedies—" Daniel's voice was flat. You mean burning her? Or leaving her out here until her heart gives out? No one answered. Daniel looked at the woman, at the boy. The child's eyes were fixed on him, huge, dark, waiting. The woman's expression had not changed. She was not begging. She was not pleading. She was just watching him the way she had watched him from the start. Measuring. Something turned over in Daniel's chest. A door opening that had been closed for 15 years. I'm taking her out of here, he said. Cobb's hand dropped to his saddlebag. Not his gun. Not yet. That's so. That's so. And if we say different? Daniel stepped forward. His knee throbbed with every movement. But he kept his pace steady. Slow, he stopped beside his mule and took the reins. You got 4 men, he said. All armed. I got a folding knife and a bad leg. You can stop me if you want. He paused. But you'll have to decide if that's the kind of men you are. The kind who shoot an unarmed stranger for helping a woman and her boy. Silence. The wind stirred dust between them. Billy's horse stamped. The gray-bearded man scratched his chin. Cobb stared at Daniel for a long moment. Then he smiled, thin, cold, without humor. You ride out with that woman, he said. Don't bother coming back, ever. You understand me? Sutter's Bend won't have you. No one will trade with you. No one will sell to you. No one will speak your name except to curse it. Daniel nodded. I understand. You're making a mistake. Mercer. A big one. Wouldn't be my first. He turned to the woman, extended his hand. She hesitated just a moment, then took it. Her fingers were swollen, the skin hot and torn. But her grip was steady. He helped her to her feet, then lifted her onto the mule. The boy scrambled up in front of her without being asked. Daniel took the reins and started walking. Northwest, toward the mountains, behind him. Cobb's voice rang out. We'll be coming for her, Mercer, and for you. Daniel did not turn around. I reckon you will. He walked. The mule followed. The woman and boy sat silent, their weight shifting with every step. The sun beat down on his shoulders, and his knees screamed with every stride. He heard hoofbeats, one rider peeling off, heading back toward the town. The others stayed, watching. Let them watch. Daniel kept walking, step after step. The mountains rose ahead, blue and hazy in the distance. 3 days, maybe 4, if his knee held. Boo. If the mule did not give out, if the water lasted, if those men did not ride him down before nightfall, he walked, and he did not look back. The woman's voice came from behind him, low enough that only he could hear why. Daniel did not answer. He was not sure he had one. All he knew was that 15 years ago, he had stood in a room smelling of blood and lavender, while a doctor told him his wife was gone, his daughter was gone, and there was nothing he could have done. He had done nothing then. He was not doing nothing now. The mountains waited. Somewhere behind them, hoofbeats gathered. The stars came out one by one, cold and sharp above the desert floor. Daniel led the mule by its rope halter, picking his way through the scrub brush and loose rock. The woman and boy rode in silence. Behind them, the last glow of sunset had faded to purple, then black. No hoofbeats followed. Not yet. His knee had settled into a dull, constant ache, the kind he could walk through if he did not think about it too much. 10 years since the horse threw him. 10 years of favoring the right leg. of knowing when rain was coming by the way the joint stiffened. He had learned to live with it. A man learned to live with a lot of things out here. The canyon mouth appeared as a darker shadow against the darkness. Daniel had scouted this territory years ago, back when he still worked for the army, back before Sarah, before everything changed. The memory of those days felt like someone else's life, now a story he had heard once and half forgotten. He led the mule into the narrow passage. Rock walls rose on either side, blocking the wind. The temperature dropped. Somewhere ahead, water trickled over stone. "Here," he said, stopping at a shallow alcove carved into the canyon wall. The ceiling was blackened with soot from old fires. Others had sheltered here before. Hunters, travelers, men running from something or toward something. He helped the woman down first. Her legs buckled when they touched the ground, and she caught herself against the mule's flank. The boy slid down after her, landing hard, then pressing close to her side. Daniel gathered what wood he could find: dried sage, twisted juniper branches, the brittle remains of a dead mesquite. He pulled the tin box of lucifer matches from his saddlebag and struck one against the rough surface. The flame caught. He fed it carefully, building the fire until it crackled and popped, sending sparks up toward the soot-stained ceiling. The smell of burning sage filled the alcove, sharp and clean. The woman had moved to the edge of the firelight. She was pulling plants from crevices in the rock, small, scraggly things Daniel could not name. Her movements were slow but precise, deliberate, like someone who knew exactly what she was looking for. The boy sat close to the fire, hymns wrapped around his knees. His skin had a grayish cast beneath the brown. His eyes were too bright. "He's burning up," Daniel said. The woman looked at her son. Her jaw tightened. She came to him, knelt, pressed her palm to his forehead. Then she turned back to the plants she had gathered. Her fingers worked quickly, crushing leaves, mixing them with water from Daniel's canteen, forming a paste. She spoke to the boy in Apache, soft words. The boy nodded and opened his mouth. She placed the paste under his tongue. Then she wrapped him in Daniel's wool blanket, moth-eaten, smelling of horse and old sweat, and settled him against the warmest part of the rock wall. Daniel watched, said nothing. When she was finished, she sat across the fire from him. The flames cast moving shadows across her face. She reached into a small leather pouch at her waist and pulled out a clay jar no bigger than his thumb. She uncorked it, dipped her finger in, and began rubbing the contents into the raw wounds on her wrists. "I can help with that," Daniel said. She did not look up. No, her tone was not angry. Just final. Daniel nodded and turned his attention to the fire. The silence stretched. Wood crackled. Somewhere in the canyon, a coyote called a long, wavering note that echoed off the walls and faded into nothing. Another answered from farther away. "You got a name?" Daniel asked. She finished with one wrist and started on the other. "Kawigi, his people say, willow, willow." He tested the word. It fit her, somehow bending but not breaking. "I'm Daniel. Daniel Mercer." "Mercer." She pronounced it carefully, like she was memorizing it. "This means something. Means my pa sold cloth. Long time ago. Another life." She nodded, corked the jar, tucked it back into her pouch. The fire popped, sending up a shower of sparks. Daniel pulled out his provisions, a strip of dried beef, a piece of hardtack that could break teeth if you were not careful. He tore the jerky in half and held out a portion. She took it. ate slowly. The boy was already asleep, his breathing shallow but steady. "The Patterson woman," Daniel said. "What really happened?" Willow chewed, swallowed. Her eyes stayed on the fire. "She's sick long time. Before I come, a husband bring me because a doctor cost too much. I look at her." She shook her head slightly. "Already dying. Inside. Nothing I can do. So the willow bark. For fever. For pain. So she not suffer so much at end." Her voice was flat, factual. "I tell husband. He not want to hear. When she die, he need someone to blame. Easier than truth." Daniel said nothing. He had seen it before, grief turning to rage, looking for a target, any target. "Your boy," he said. "What's his name? Ashke." A ghost of something crossed her face. Pride, maybe, a pain. "Means he is brave. His father choose it. His father dead. 2 winters." She did not elaborate, did not need to. Daniel nodded. He understood about not wanting to talk, about carrying things that words could not touch. The fire had burned down to coals. He added another branch. Sparks swirled up toward the blackened ceiling. "Your knee," Willow said. "It hurt." Daniel looked down at his leg, stretched out in front of him. The joint had swollen again. He could feel it pressing against the inside of his boot. "Old story. Horse threw me. 10 years back. I have medicine. You drink? I ain't much for—" She was already moving, pulling another small pouch from her bag. She shook dried leaves into a tin cup, then added water from the canteen. She held it out to him. "Drink." Her eyes met his. No pleading, no gratitude. Just a simple exchange, and he had given her water. She was giving him this. Daniel took the cup. The tea was bitter, like chewing on bark and dirt. He drank it anyway. She watched until he finished, then nodded once and turned back to the fire. The warmth spread through him slowly. His knee stopped throbbing. The ache in his shoulders loosened. He had not realized how tight he had been holding himself until the tension released. "Thank you," he said. She did not answer. She was looking at her son now, her hand resting lightly on his back, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing. Daniel leaned against the rock wall. The fire cast dancing shadows on the canyon walls. Outside, the coyotes had gone quiet. The stars wheeled slowly overhead, cold and different. He should sleep. They would need to move at first light. The men from Sutter's Bend would be coming, maybe not tonight, but soon. Cobb did not seem like the type to let things go. And the rain that had fallen higher in the mountains would slow them, wash away some tracks, but not forever. But sleep did not come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sarah's face, the way she had looked in the morning light, laughing at something he had said, the way she had held his hand when the pain started, the way the doctor's face had gone blank when he came out of the room. 15 years. And still the memories came when he was not watching, across the fire. Willow sat motionless. Her eyes were open, watching the darkness beyond the firelight. 2 strangers, both awake, both keeping watch, neither trusting sleep. The boy stirred in his blanket, murmured something. His mother's hand moved to his hair, stroking gently. He settled. Daniel looked at them, the woman, the child, and something shifted in his chest. Not quite warmth, not quite peace, just the recognition of something familiar. something he had thought he had lost. Then, from somewhere in the darkness outside the canyon, he heard it, the distant whinny of a horse. The whinny did not repeat. Daniel sat motionless, hand resting on his knife, ears straining against the silence, wind through the canyon, the faint crackle of dying embers. Nothing else. Willow had gone still too. Her eyes met his across the fire's glow. She had heard it. They waited. 1 minute. 2. The darkness outside the alcove remained empty. No hoofbeats, no voices, no silhouettes against the stars. Wild horse, Daniel said finally. His voice was low. Maybe. Willow did not answer. She did not look convinced. Neither was he. But the night passed without incident. Daniel dozed in fragments, jerking awake at every sound, the skitter of a lizard across rock, the distant cry of an owl, the shifting of the mule's weight. Each time, the canyon mouth remained dark and empty. When dawn came, gray and cold, they moved. The boy's fever had broken sometime in the night. He walked on his own now, though his legs were unsteady, and he had to stop often to rest. Willow kept close to him, one hand always ready to catch him if he stumbled. Daniel led the mule through the narrowing canyon. The walls rose higher, blocking the morning sun. The air smelled of damp stone and something green moss, maybe, or the memory of water. His knee had loosened overnight. The swelling down. Whatever Willow had given him, it worked. The trail climbed. Switchbacks carved into the rock face. Ancient paths worn smooth by generations of feet. Moccasins, boots, hooves. This land had been traveled long before Daniel's people came, and it would be traveled long after they were gone. By mid-morning, they emerged onto a high shelf overlooking a narrow valley. Pine trees dotted the slopes. A thin stream glinted at the bottom, catching the sun. The smell of sage drifted up from below, sharp and familiar. Hashke crouched beside a patch of bare earth, studying something. Daniel walked over and looked down. Tracks. 2 toes pointing forward, 2 back. Shia, the boy said. What this? Daniel knelt beside him. The word the boy had used, he did not know Apache, but he had heard enough tribal languages to recognize the shape of it. A family word. Uncle, maybe, or something close. Deer, he said. See how the toes point, headed for water. This morning, probably. Tracks are fresh. Hashke traced the outline with his finger. Deer, he repeated carefully. Then he pointed to another set of prints nearby, smaller, rounder. Rabbit, Daniel said. Moving fast. See how the back feet land in front of the front feet. That's a rabbit running. The boy nodded. His dark eyes were intent, absorbing everything. He pointed to another mark in the dirt, a long, sinuous line. Snake, Daniel said. Sidewinder, from the look of it. Went that way. He gestured toward a tumble of rocks. Probably hunting mice. Hashke stood up. He said something in Apache, then caught himself and tried again in English. I teach you. Word for deer. All right. Bee. The boy pronounced it carefully. The vowel strange to Daniel's ear. Bee? Daniel repeated. It came out wrong, too flat, too heavy. Hashke grinned. The first smile Daniel had seen from him. No. B. He drew out the sound, made it rise and fall. Daniel tried again. Closer this time. The boy nodded encouragingly. Rabbit? Daniel asked. Gah, gah. That one was easier. Snake, twish. Daniel did not even attempt that one. Hashke laughed a small sound, quickly swallowed, but real. The boy looked surprised at himself. Like he had forgotten laughing was something people did. They descended into the valley. The stream was shallow and clear, running over smooth stones. The water had an alkaline smell, mineral-rich from the rocks it passed through. Willow knelt at the edge and drank, then filled the canteens while the mule waded in up to its knees and lowered its head to the water. Daniel sat on a flat rock and pulled off his boots. His feet were blistered. His hands were worse, the rains had rubbed them raw, and the rope halter had opened cracks in his palms that oozed clear fluid. He had not held a lead rope this long in years. The ranch practically ran itself these days. Had run itself. He was not sure what would happen to it now. Willow appeared beside him. She looked at his hands. Her expression did not change, but something shifted behind her eyes. "Show me," she said. "It's nothing, just blisters." She held out her hand, palm up, waiting. Daniel hesitated. Then he extended his hands, palms facing upward. She took them in hers, her fingers cool and dry against his skin, and turned them toward the light. She studied the damage without speaking. Then she released him and walked to where she had left her pouch. She returned with a small clay pot and strips of cloth. She knelt in front of him and took his right hand again. Her touch was gentle but firm, professional. She had done this before, many times. She dipped her fingers into the pot, the same salve she had used on her own wrists, and began working it into the torn skin. It stung at first, then cooled. The pain faded to a distant hum. The salve smelled of pine resin and something earthier beneath. "The cloth," Daniel said. "Where'd you get it?" "My dress." She did not look up. The part underneath. Clean. She had torn strips from her own petticoat to bandage his hands. He watched her wrap the cloth around his palm, securing it with a knot. Her movements were precise, economical. No wasted motion. "You do this a lot," he said. "Help people." "My grandmother teach me. She medicine woman, very good." Willow finished with his right hand and moved to the left. "Soldiers come when I am small. They take her. Say she make trouble." Her voice stayed flat, factual. "They shoot her, leave her body in the dirt." Daniel said nothing. There was nothing to say. "I watch," Willow continued. "I hide in the rocks. I see everything." She tied off the second bandage and sat back on her heels. "After that, I learn everything she know, so she not disappear." The stream burbled over the stones. Hashke was downstream, crouching at the water's edge, watching minnows dart between the rocks. A jay called from somewhere in the pines. "You have woman?" Willow asked. "Before." The question hit him like a fist to the chest. He had known it was coming, had felt it building since the night before, since she had looked at him across the fire with those measuring eyes. "Had," he said. His voice came out rough, wrong. "Sarah, she—" He stopped, swallowed, started again. "She died. Birthing the child. Didn't make it either." He looked down at his bandaged hands. "Little girl. Never even got to hold her." Doctor came out of the room with blood on his apron and said they were both gone. Just like that. Both gone. The words hung between them. He had not spoken them aloud in 15 years. Had not said Sarah's name to another person since the funeral. Since her parents had taken what was left of her things and gone back east and never written. "I am sorry," Willow said. "Long time ago. Some pain." She paused, searching for words. No time makes smaller. Daniel looked at her. Really looked. She was not beautiful. Not in the way Sarah had been beautiful. Her face was too sharp. Her eyes too hard. Her mouth too set. But there was something there. Something that recognized him. Something that knew. "No," he said. "I reckon not." She nodded. Just once. A small movement. But it was enough. The moment stretched. Neither of them moved. The stream kept running. The mule kept drinking. Hashke kept watching the minnows. Then Willow stood and walked back to her pouch. She pulled out dried roots cattails, from the look of them, and began preparing them for eating. The moment was over, but something had changed. Something small. Something real. Daniel flexed his bandaged hands. They did not hurt anymore. He looked at the mountains rising ahead of them. Another day's travel. Maybe two, before they reached the old Miller homestead. He had heard it was abandoned. Heard the silver had dried up and the family had moved on. It would have water, walls, a place to rest, a place to figure out what came next. If they made it that far. Shia. Hashke's voice came from downstream. He was standing now, pointing at something in the water. "Come look. Big fish." Daniel pushed himself to his feet. His knee held. The boy was waving him over. Excitement breaking through the exhaustion on his face. Daniel walked toward him. And for the first time in 15 years, the weight in his chest felt a little bit lighter. That evening, they camped in a grove of pines. The air smelled of resin and fallen needles. Daniel caught a rabbit with a snare he had rigged from rope. Willow cooked it with herbs she had gathered along the way, wild onion and sage that made the meat taste rich and savory. Hashke fell asleep with a full stomach, curled against his mother's side beneath the wool blanket. Daniel sat across the fire, whittling a piece of pine with his folding knife. The bandages made his grip awkward. But he managed. The wood was taking shape under his hands, a rough form. Not quite anything yet. Willow watched him work. She did not speak. Neither did he. The fire crackled. The pines swayed in the night breeze. Somewhere in the darkness, a wolf howled long and low, answered by another from farther away. Daniel looked up from his whittling. Willow was still watching him, but her expression had changed, softened, somehow, like she was seeing something she had not expected. He went back to his carving. The silence between them had changed too. It was not the silence of strangers anymore. It was something else, something he did not have a word for. The fire burned down. The stars came out, cold and bright through the pine branches. The wolves went quiet. And then, from somewhere to the east, faint but unmistakable, Daniel heard what he had been dreading since they left the desert floor. Hoofbeats. More than one horse. Moving fast. Daniel kicked dirt over the fire. The coals hissed and died. Darkness swallowed the camp. "Move," he whispered. "Now." Willow was already shaking Hashke awake. The boy came up confused, eyes unfocused. But she clamped a hand over his mouth before he could speak. She said something in Apache, low, urgent, and he nodded. They moved through the pines, Daniel leading the mule by its halter, Willow carrying Hashke on her back. The boy was too tired to walk fast enough. No time to argue about it. The hoofbeats grew louder, then stopped. Daniel froze, listened. Voices, distant, carrying through the night air the way sound does in the mountains, clear but directionless. He could not make out words, could not tell how many men, could not tell which way they were moving. He led them into a ravine, following the dry creek bed that cut between two ridges. The rocks were rough underfoot, the footing treacherous in the dark. The mule stumbled twice. Daniel caught the halter each time, steadying the animal, urging it forward. They walked for an hour, maybe more. The voices faded. The hoofbeats did not return. When dawn came, gray and cold, Daniel found a hollow beneath an overhang of rock and called a halt. Willow set Hashke down. The boy was asleep before his head touched the ground. "They go wrong way," Willow said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. For now, Daniel agreed. The rain higher up washed out our tracks, bought us time, but they'll circle back once they realize. They rested through the morning. No fire, no hot food, just hardtack and water and the cold mountain air seeping through their clothes. Daniel's knee had stiffened again, the swelling returning with a vengeance. He did not mention it. There was nothing to be done. By midday, they were moving again. The trail climbed higher, winding through stands of aspen and pine. The air thinned. Daniel's breath came harder, his chest tight from the altitude. The mule labored behind him, its sides heaving. The smell of wet earth and pine resin filled his lungs. They heard the river before they saw it, a low roar, building as they descended. The sound of water moving fast over rock, lots of water. More than there should have been. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. The trees parted. The river spread before them. It was 30 feet across, maybe more. The water was brown and churning, swollen with runoff from recent rain somewhere higher in the mountains. Debris floated past branches, logs, clumps of uprooted grass. The current moved with a speed that made Daniel's mouth go dry. "We cross here?" Willow asked. "We have to—" Daniel studied the far bank. "That's the way to the Miller homestead. Only way I know. The water, I know." He looked at the river, looked back the way they had come. "They're behind us. Maybe a day, maybe less. If we go around, try to find another crossing, they'll catch up." Willow said nothing. She was looking at Hashke. The boy stood at the water's edge, watching the debris rush past. His face was pale. Daniel walked upstream, then downstream, searching for a better spot. There was not one. The river ran fast and deep in both directions, the bank steep and crumbling. This was the crossing point, a place where the riverbed widened and the water spread thinner over a gravel bar. It was still dangerous. It was still their best option. He came back to where Willow waited. "I'll go first. Test the depth. If it holds, you and the boy follow on the mule. And if it not hold, then we find another way." He did not believe it. She did not either, but she nodded anyway. Daniel took the mule's halter and stepped into the water. The cold hit him like a fist. His boots filled instantly, the current tugging at his ankles, then his calves, then his thighs. The gravel shifted beneath his feet, unstable, unpredictable. He planted each step carefully, feeling for solid ground before committing his weight. The mule balked at the water's edge. Daniel pulled the halter, coaxing, urging. The animal snorted, tossed its head, then stepped in. It did not like it. Neither did Daniel. Halfway across, the water was chest-deep now, the current shoving against him with a force that made his legs burn. He leaned into it, using the mule's bulk as an anchor. The animal was struggling too, its hooves slipping on the rocks, its eyes rolling white with fear. "Keep moving," Daniel muttered. To himself, to the mule, to whatever might be listening. "Keep moving." He reached the far bank, hauled himself up onto solid ground, turned to signal Willow. She was already in the water. Hashke sat on the mule's back, gripping the saddle horn with both hands. Willow walked alongside, one hand on the animal's neck, guiding it forward. They were a quarter of the way across when Daniel sawed a log, big as a man's torso, barreling downstream. It was moving fast, spinning in the current, headed straight for them. "Willow," he shouted. "Look out!" She turned, saw the log, tried to pull the mule back. Too late. The log hit the mule's hindquarters with a sound like a wet slap. The animal screamed a high, terrified sound and lurched sideways. Its back legs went out from under it. Hashke flew off the saddle. The boy hit the water and vanished. One moment he was there, booms windmilling, mouth open in a cry that the river swallowed. The next moment there was only churning brown water and debris. "Hashke!" Willow's scream cut through the roar of the river. She lunged toward the spot where her son had disappeared, but the current caught her too, spinning her sideways, dragging her downstream. Daniel did not think. He threw himself into the water. The cold closed over his head. He came up gasping, eyes burning, searching for any sign of the boy. There, 20 feet downstream, a small hand breaking the surface, fingers clawing at nothing. He swam. The current fought him, tried to pull him under, but he kicked and stroked and clawed his way toward that hand. His knees screamed with every movement. He ignored it. 10 feet, 5. The hand disappeared. Daniel dove. The water was murky, full of silt and debris. He could not see anything. He reached out blindly, fingers raking through the current, searching. Searching, his hand closed around cloth. He pulled. Hashke's face broke the surface. The boy was coughing, choking, eyes wild with terror. Daniel wrapped an arm around his chest and kicked toward the bank. The current did not want to let them go. It pulled at Daniel's legs, dragged at his boots, tried to suck them both under. His knee buckled. Pain shot up his thigh, into his hip, so intense that his vision went white at the edges. He kicked anyway. 1 stroke. 2. His feet touched bottom solid ground. Finally, blessedly solid ground. He hauled Hashke up onto the bank and collapsed beside him. The boy was coughing up water, his whole body shaking, but he was breathing. He was alive. Willow reached them moments later. She scrambled up the bank on her hands and knees, soaked, shivering, and gathered her son into her arms. She was saying something in Apache, the same word, over and over, a prayer or a plea or both. Daniel tried to stand. His knee gave out. He went down hard, landing on his side in the mud. The pain was blinding now, a white-hot fire that radiated from his knee up through his entire leg. He tried to push himself up. His arms shook. His knee would not bend, would not straighten, would not do anything but scream. "Mercer?" Willow's voice cut through the haze. She was kneeling beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "Mercer, your leg." He looked down. His knee had swollen to twice its normal size. The fabric of his trousers stretched tight over the joint. He tried to move it. Nothing happened. "Can't walk," he said. Voice sounded strange to his own ears. Distant. Knees gone. Willow's face was wet river water or tears. He could not tell. She looked at his leg, looked at the far bank where the mule had managed to struggle ashore, sides heaving, the panniers waterlogged and dripping, looked back at him. "We carry you," she said. "You can't carry me. I'm twice your size. We make—" She searched for the word. "Travois, branches, rope, mule pull." Daniel shook his head. "That'll take time. They're coming. Then we make fast." She was already moving, barking orders at Hashke and Apache. The boy wiped his face, nodded, and began gathering fallen branches from along the riverbank. His hands were shaking. He gathered anyway. Daniel lay in the mud and watched them work. The pain in his knee had settled into a dull, throbbing ache, the kind that meant something was seriously wrong. Torn ligaments. Maybe worse. He had seen injuries like this before. Men who never walked right again. Men who lost the leg entirely. He looked at the sky. Gray clouds building in the west. Rain coming. That would slow the men from Sutter's Bend. Might buy them another day. Or it might wash out the trail to the Miller homestead entirely. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, Willow was standing over him. She had built the travois, 2 long branches lashed together with rope from the mule's pack. A blanket stretched between them for a bed. "Help me get up," Daniel said. She and Hashke grabbed his arms and hauled him upright. He hopped on his good leg, teeth gritted against the pain, and let them lower him onto the travois. The mule was hitched to the front. Willow took the halter. Hashke walked beside Daniel, one small hand resting on the edge of the travois. "Shia," the boy said quietly. "Thank you for saving me." Daniel looked at him. The boy's face was pale, his lips still tinged with blue from the cold water. But his eyes were steady, old beyond his years. "You're welcome," Daniel said. Willow clicked her tongue. The mule started forward. The travois lurched, and Daniel bit back a groan as his knee shifted. They moved up the bank and into the trees. Behind them, the river roared on, indifferent to what had almost happened. What still might happen. The clouds kept building. The first drops of rain began to fall, and somewhere behind them, getting closer with every hour, the men from Sutter's Bend were coming. The rain came down in sheets. Daniel lay on the travois beneath a stand of pines, the branches above offering little shelter. Water ran down his face, soaked through his shirt, pooled beneath his back. He was shivering deep. Uncontrollable shudders that made his teeth chatter and his knee throb with every movement. Willow had built a lean-to from pine branches and the mule's saddle blanket. It was not much. The wind tore at the edges, driving rain sideways into the makeshift shelter. Hashke huddled inside, wrapped in what was left of Daniel's wool blanket. The boy's face was gray with exhaustion. The fire would not catch. Willow tried 3 times with the last of the lucifer matches, shielding the flame with her body, but the wood was too wet. The matches sputtered and died. She gave up, sat back on her heels, said nothing. Daniel watched her through the rain. She was soaked to the bone, her calico dress plastered to her skin, her hair hanging in wet ropes down her back. She looked smaller than he had realized, smaller and older and more tired than anyone should have to be. This was his fault, all of it. He had brought them up this trail. He had insisted on crossing the river. He had been the one who said they had no choice. who pushed them forward when they should have found another way. And now here they were, cold, wet, hunted because of him, because he had thought he knew better. He tried to push himself up on his elbow. His arm shook. His knees screamed. He collapsed back onto the travois, gasping, and felt the mud squelch beneath his shoulders. The smell of it filled his nose, wet earth and rotting leaves, and something darker beneath. I need to... He tried again, got halfway up. His arms gave out and he fell sideways off the travois, landing face first in the mud. The cold shocked him. The taste of it, grit and minerals and rainwater, filled his mouth. He pushed with his hands, trying to lift himself, but his arms were shaking too badly. His knee was a useless weight, dragging him down. He could not even roll over. He lay there in the mud, face pressed into the wet earth, and felt something crack inside his chest. Not bone. Something else. Something that had been holding him together for 15 years. Willow's hands found his shoulders. She rolled him onto his back. Rain struck his face, washing away the mud, running into his eyes and mouth. He stared up at the gray sky and did not move. "Mercer." Her voice was sharp. "Mercer, look at me." He looked at her. She was kneeling beside him in the mud, her dress ruined, her hair plastered to her skull. Mud streaked her cheeks and chin. She did not seem to notice. "You should go," he said. The words came out flat. "Dead. Take Hashke. Leave me here. I'm slowing you down. No. Willow. No." She grabbed the front of his shirt and pulled him upright. Her grip was stronger than he expected. "You save my son? In the river? You jump in, you pull him out, and now I can't walk." He tried to pull away from her. Could not. "I can't even get out of the mud on my own. He stopped. The words stuck in his throat. Worthless. That was what he was. 15 years ago. He had stood outside a door while Sarah screamed and the doctor told him to wait. Just wait. There was nothing he could do. He had waited, and she had died. And he had done nothing. Just like now, in the mud, like a crippled animal, while a woman and child struggled to survive because of him. "I can't do anything," he said. His voice cracked. He hated the sound of it, hated the weakness it revealed. "I can't protect you. I can't fight. I can't even stand up." Willow did not let go of his shirt. She stared at him, rain running down her face, her eyes hard and bright in the gray light. "You think you useless?" she said. Daniel did not answer. Could not. "I watched my grandmother die." Her voice was flat, matter of fact. "Soldiers drag her out of our home, shoot her in front of everyone, leave her body in the dirt." She paused. "I hide. I do nothing. I am 8 years old, and I hide like a rabbit while they kill her." The rain kept falling. Somewhere in the darkness of the lean-to, Hashke coughed. "For many years. I think I am worthless, too. I think why I not fight, why I not die with her, why I live when she die." She released his shirt, but did not move away. "Then I learn what she teach me. The medicine, the healing. I learn everything. And I help people, many people, because that is how I honor her. Not by dying, by living, by doing what she teach me." Daniel looked at her. The mud was cold beneath him. The rain was cold on his face, but something else was there too. something he did not have a name for. "You save my son," Willow said. "You walk into water and pull him out. That is not nothing. That is not useless. I can't protect you. Not like this. Then I protect you." She said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. We protect each other. That is what family do. Family. The word hung between them. Daniel opened his mouth to argue, to tell her she was wrong, that he was not her family, that she owed him nothing. The words would not come, because she was not wrong. Somewhere in the last 3 days, somewhere between the rock and the river, between the canyon and the crossing, something had changed. He did not know when. He did not know how, but he could feel it. Willow helped him back onto the travois. Her hands were gentle but firm. She positioned his leg, checked the swelling, applied more of the salve from her pouch. The smell of pine resin cut through the rain and mud. The storm eased as night fell. The clouds thinned. Stars appeared through gaps in the branches, cold and distant. Hashke woke screaming, "Shima, Shima." Willow was at his side in an instant, pulling him into her arms, murmuring in Apache. The boy was shaking, tears streaming down his face, words spilling out faster than Daniel could follow. "What is it?" Daniel asked. "He dream," Willow said. Her voice was tight. "He dream I am on the rock again. The bad men come back. They take me away." Hashke's eyes found Daniel's in the darkness. The boy's face was wet with tears and rain. He looked so young, so small, so afraid. Hashke whispered. "They come, the bad men." Daniel did not know how to answer. He could not lie, could not tell the boy everything was fine when it was not. But he could not tell him the truth either, that the men were coming, that they would be here soon, that Daniel had no plan, no way to stop them. So he said the only thing he could say, "I won't let them take your mother. I promise." Hashke's face changed. The fear did not disappear, but it eased. The boy nodded slowly. "Promise," he said. "Promise." Willow looked at Daniel over her son's head. Her expression was unreadable, but she gave a small nod acknowledgement. Maybe, or something more. She settled Hashke between them. The boy pressed against her side, one small hand reaching out to rest on Daniel's arm. And then she began to sing. The melody was low and soft, rising and falling like wind through the pines. The words were Apache strange and beautiful, full of sounds Daniel had never heard before. He did not understand them. He did not need to. The song was about loss, about grief, about carrying on when everything seemed hopeless. He could hear it in the shape of the notes, in the pauses between phrases, in the way Willow's voice cracked on certain words and smoothed out on others. Hashke's breathing slowed. His grip on Daniel's arm loosened. His eyes closed. The song ended. Willow's eyes found his in the darkness. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. Her hand moved across the space between them and found his. Her fingers were cold. His were colder, but they held on anyway. They stayed like that, 3 people huddled in the mud beneath a broken lean-to, holding onto each other against the darkness. The rain stopped. The clouds parted. The stars came out in full, cold and bright and indifferent. And then, just before dawn, Daniel heard it. Voices, distant but clear, carrying through the still mountain air. The men from Sutter's Bend had reached the river. 5 days had passed since the river. Daniel stood on the porch of the Miller homestead, leaning heavily on a cane Willow had carved from a pine branch. His knee still throbbed with every movement, but the swelling had gone down enough that he could bear weight on it. Barely. Her medicine had done what medicine could do. The rest would take time he did not have. The homestead had emerged from the pines like a ghost, a main house of adobe and timber, its roof sagging in the middle, windows dark and empty, a barn with half its doors missing, a stone nail with the rusted pump handle, wild chamomile growing in what had once been a garden. The smell of sage and dust hung thick in the morning air. They had arrived 2 days ago, exhausted, half-starved. Daniel barely conscious from the pain. Willow had cleaned out the main room, swept away the worst of the debris, gotten the cast-iron stove working with parts salvaged from the barn. Hashke had discovered the root cellar still stocked with a few withered potatoes and a jar of preserved beans that might still be good. For 2 days, they had rested, healed, waited. Now the waiting was over. Daniel watched the riders crest the ridge to the east, 8 men on horseback, picking their way through the trees, silhouettes black against the morning sun. Cobb rode at the front, his silver watch chain catching the light. Behind him came the gray, bearded man, Billy, and 5 others Daniel did not recognize, all armed, all watching the house. "Willow," Daniel said without turning, "take Hashke to the root cellar." "No." He looked back. She stood in the doorway, her face set. Hashke was behind her, small and pale, but steady. "We stay," she said. "Together." Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to order her to hide, to protect herself, to give him this one thing he could do. But the look in her eyes stopped him. She was not going anywhere. He turned back to the riders, adjusted his grip on the cane. His knife was in his belt, but it might as well have been on the moon. Against 8 armed men, it was useless. Everything was useless, except maybe words. Cobb reined up 30 feet from the house. The other riders fanned out behind him, blocking the approaches. No one dismounted. No one drew a weapon. Yet, "Mercer," Cobb's voice carried clearly in the still air. "Come on out. Let's talk this through like civilized men." Daniel was already on the porch. He stepped forward, leaning on his cane, and stopped at the edge of the steps. The wood creaked beneath his weight. "I'm out," he said. "Talk." Cobb's eyes moved over him, the cane, the swollen knee visible through the torn trousers, the empty hands. A smile flickered across his face, thin, cold. "You look rough, Mercer. That leg don't look good. It'll hold. Will it?" Cobb leaned forward in his saddle. "Here's what I'm thinking. You're hurt. You're alone. You got no gun, no supplies, no way out. The smart thing would be to hand over the woman and her boy and ride on. We got no quarrel with you. Not really. You were just passing through. Made a mistake. Mistakes can be forgiven." Daniel said nothing. He could feel the morning sun on his face. Warm despite the chill in the air, he could hear Hashke's breathing behind him, quick and scared. He could smell the sage from the garden, sharp and clean. "The woman, though..." Cobb shook his head. "She's got to answer for what she did. Mrs. Patterson's dead. Someone's got to pay. Mrs. Patterson was dying before Willow ever touched her." Daniel's grip tightened on the cane. "Her husband said so himself. Sick for weeks. Could not keep food down. That's not witchcraft. Cobb. That's cancer. Or consumption. Or 100 other things that kill people, whether we want them to or not. That's not what Tom Patterson says. Tom Patterson is looking for someone to blame. He can't blame the sickness. He can't blame himself for not calling a doctor sooner. So he blames her. Daniel gestured behind him with his free hand. She gave his wife willow bark tea. Same thing my mother used. Same thing your mother probably used. Same thing half the women on the frontier have used since before any of us were born. Silence. The horses shifted. One of the men, a thin fellow with a patchy beard, glanced at the rider beside him. The gray-bearded man scratched his chin but said nothing. That don't change nothing, Cobb said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. Doesn't it? Daniel looked past Cobb to the men behind him. You, Billy, isn't it? Your mother ever make you tea when you were sick, willow bark mint? Something to bring down a fever. Billy's face went red. He shifted in his saddle but did not answer. How about you? Daniel nodded to the gray-bearded man. You got children, grandchildren. They ever get sick? What did you give them? The gray-bearded man's jaw tightened. He looked away. See, that's the thing, Daniel continued. Every one of you has used the same remedies she did. Every one of you has given your families the same medicine. The only difference is, she's Apache, and that makes it easier to call it witchcraft. You don't know what you're talking about. Cobb's voice was harsh now. You don't know our town. You don't know what we've been through. I know a woman was left tied to a rock in the sun. Daniel's voice stayed level, calm. I know her boy, 8 years old, ran for miles looking for help. I know you were going to let her die out there, slow and painful, because it was easier than admitting the truth. What truth? That Mrs. Patterson was going to die no matter what. That there was nothing anyone could have done. That blaming an Apache woman doesn't change that. The words hung in the air. No one moved. Daniel looked at the men, really looked at them. At the young one named Billy, barely out of boyhood, his face pale beneath the sunburn. At the gray-bearded man, who would not meet his eyes. At the thin fellow with the patchy beard, who kept glancing back down the trail like he wanted to be anywhere else. These were not killers, they were not monsters. They were farmers and shopkeepers and fathers who had ridden out here because someone told them they should. Because it was easier to follow than to question. Let me ask you something, Daniel said. Each of you. Look me in the eye and answer. He pointed at Billy. You. Would you want your mother left to die in the sun, tied to a rock, while the vultures circled? Billy's face went pale. He shook his head. His horse stamped, sensing his unease. Daniel pointed at the gray-bearded man. What about your wife, your daughter? Would you want them treated that way? The man's hand moved to his chest unconsciously, maybe to a locket or a photograph hidden beneath his shirt. He did not answer. He did not need to. How about the rest of you? Daniel swept his gaze across the group. Any of you want to explain to your children what you did out here today? Any of you want to look your wives in the face and tell them you helped kill a woman and her boy because someone said she was a witch? Silence. The horses stamped. The wind stirred the dust. The smell of sage drifted up from the garden. Billy was the first to move. He swung down from his saddle, boots hitting the ground with a thud. His face was set, not defiant, not angry, just certain. I'm done, he said. His voice cracked. But he kept going. My ma used Apache medicine when I was born early. A woman from the reservation said it saved my life. I ain't part of this. He turned and walked away, leading his horse down the trail toward the valley. The thin man with the patchy beard looked at Cobb, then at the others, then at Daniel. He dismounted without a word and followed Billy. The gray-bearded man sat motionless for a long moment. Then he sighed a deep, weary sound and tipped his hat to Daniel. Ain't my fight, he said quietly. Never was. He turned his horse and rode away, one by one. The others followed, and the young ones first. Then the older men. They did not speak, did not look back, just rode down the trail and disappeared into the trees, until only Cobb remained. He sat his horse in the morning light, silver watch chain gleaming, face tight with something that might have been rage or might have been shame. His hand rested on his saddlebag close to his pistol, but not touching it. Daniel waited. The cane felt solid in his hand. This ain't over, Cobb said finally. His voice was flat, hollow. You hear me, Mercer? This ain't over. Maybe not, Daniel said. But it is for today. Cobb stared at him. Daniel stared back. Neither moved. Then Cobb turned his horse and rode away. Daniel watched until the man disappeared into the trees. Then his good leg buckled, and he caught himself on the porch rail, leaning heavily, his whole body shaking. Willow was beside him instantly. Hashke, too. The boy's hand found Daniel's arm and held on tight. They go, Hashke asked. Daniel looked at the empty trail, at the dust settling in the morning light, at the mountains rising blue and silent in the distance. Yeah, he said. They go. Willow said nothing, but her hand found his and squeezed. They stood there together, 3 people on a broken porch, watching the sun climb higher, and for the first time in 5 days. Daniel allowed himself to breathe, but Cobb's words echoed in his head. This ain't over, and Daniel knew he was right. 3 weeks had changed everything. Daniel stood on the porch of the Miller homestead, his homestead now, and watched the sun climb over the eastern ridge. The air smelled of turned earth and sage and something sweeter beneath. Somewhere behind the barn, a rooster crowed, the one they had traded for at the settlement 15 miles south, along with 2 laying hens, a bag of seed corn, and a pony small enough for a boy to ride. His knees still ached, probably always would. But Willow's medicine had done its work, and he could walk now slowly, carefully. With the cane he used more from habit than necessity, not graceful, not the way he used to move, but good enough to mend fences, good enough to patch the roof where it sagged, good enough to build a rocking chair for the porch and a small bed frame for Hashke's corner of the main room. The boy was in the corral now, brushing the pony's coat with a handful of dried grass. The animal, a dun-colored mare with a white blaze on her forehead, stood patient and still, her ears flicking at flies. Hashke spoke to her in a mix of Apache and English, the words blending together like they had always belonged that way. Daniel watched at them. The boy had grown in 3 weeks. Not taller, not yet, but steadier, more sure of himself. He smiled more often now, laughed sometimes. The nightmares still came, but less frequently, and when they did, he no longer woke screaming. The garden stretched behind the house. 3 long rows of freshly turned soil. Willow had planted it herself, corn and beans and squash. The three sisters, she called them, traditional crops that her grandmother had taught her to grow. Daniel had watched her work, her hands moving through the dirt with a certainty he envied. The smell of fresh-turned earth had filled the air for days. She was out there now. He could see her kneeling at the far end of the rows, her new calico dress, blue with white flowers, traded for a jar of her fever medicine, bright against the brown earth. She was thinning the seedlings, pulling the weak ones to give the strong ones room to grow. He had never thought much about gardens before, about the patience it took to plant something and wait for it to grow, about the faith required to put a seed in the ground and trust that rain would come, that sun would come, that something would push up through the dirt and reach for the sky. He was learning. The screen door creaked as he stepped back inside. The main room was clean, now swept and scrubbed. The mouse droppings gone, the cobwebs cleared from the corners. A cast-iron stove sat against the far wall, salvaged from the barn and repaired with parts from Daniel's saddlebag. A pot of coffee warmed on top, filling the room with its bitter, familiar smell. He poured himself a cup and carried it to the table. The wood was scarred and stained, but solid. Someone had built this table to last. Someone who understood that a home was not about perfection, it was about permanence. A knock came at the door. Daniel's hand moved to his belt before he remembered he was not wearing a gun. Old habits. He picked up his cane instead and crossed to the door. The man on the porch was a stranger, middle-aged, weathered, with a dusty coat and a hat that had seen better days. A peddler's wagon sat in the yard, pulled by a tired-looking mule. The smell of leather and road dust drifted in through the open door. "Morning," the man said. He had a soft voice, the kind that came from talking to strangers for a living. "Name's Hendricks. I sell goods up and down the territory. I heard there was folks living here again." "You heard right." Hendricks peered past Daniel into the house. His eyes moved to Willow's medicine pouch, hanging by the door, then to the Apache blanket draped over the rocking chair. "You the fellow they're talking about down in Sutter's Bend?" Daniel's grip tightened on the cane. "Depends on what they're saying." Hendricks smiled, a small, cautious smile. "Saying a lot of things. Saying a man stood up against Harlan Cobb. Saying he took in a woman and a boy that the town had condemned. Saying Cobb rode out with 8 men and came back with none. They came back. Just not with Cobb. So I heard." Hendricks shifted his weight. "Also heard Tom Patterson made a confession. Told the preacher his wife had been sick for months, before that Apache woman ever touched her. Cancer of the stomach. The doctor said when they finally called one, nothing nobody could have done." Daniel said nothing. He watched the peddler's face, looking for the trick. "Town's divided now," Hendricks continued. "Some folks still side with Cobb, but a lot of 'em, the ones who rode out here with him, they've been talking, saying what you said was right. Saying they were wrong to do what they did." "That's so." "That's so." Hendricks reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. "Mrs. Henderson at the general store asked me to give you this. Said the woman here, the Apache woman, she helped her daughter through a fever last year. Before all the trouble with Patterson. She wanted to say she's sorry, and that if you ever need supplies, you're welcome in her store." Daniel took the paper, unfolded it, a simple note, handwritten, with the careful penmanship of someone who did not write often. "To the medicine woman and her family. Thank you. You are welcome here. Henderson." "Family," Daniel said quietly. "Beg pardon?" "Nothing." He folded the paper and tucked it into his pocket. "Thank you, Mr. Hendricks." You need water for your mule before you go. That'd be kind of you. Daniel pointed toward the well. Hendricks tipped his hat and led his mule across the yard. That evening, they sat on the porch as the sun went down. Willow was in the rocking chair Daniel had built, her hands busy with a piece of deerskin she was working into a new pair of moccasins for Hashke. The boy sat on the steps, whittling a piece of pine with Daniel's folding knife. He had been working on the same shape for 3 days now, a horse, he said, like his mother's pony. The smell of wood shavings mixed with the evening air. Daniel leaned against the porch rail, his bad legs stretched out in front of him. The coffee in his cup had gone cold, but he did not mind. The air was warm, the light was gold. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. Shia. Daniel looked down at Hashke. The boy had stopped whittling. His knife rested in his lap, the half-formed horse forgotten. Yeah, boy. Hashke did not answer right away. He was looking at the horse, turning it over in his hands. When he spoke, his voice was small. Are we family now? The question hung in the air. Daniel looked at Willow. She had stopped rocking, her hands still on the deerskin. Her eyes met his, dark and steady, the way they had been since the first moment he saw her. Neither of them spoke. The silence stretched. The coyote called again, farther away now. What do you think? Hashke, Daniel said finally. The boy considered the question, his brow furrowed. His fingers traced the outline of the wooden horse. I think, yes, he said. Willow's lips curved, not quite a smile, but close. She looked at her son, then at Daniel. Then yes, she said. Daniel nodded, slowly. His throat felt tight. Then yes. Hashke grinned sudden and bright, like the sun breaking through clouds. He went back to his whittling, his knife moving faster now, more confident. Daniel turned back to the sunset. The sky was orange and pink and purple, colors bleeding into each other like watercolors on wet paper. The mountain stood dark against the light, silent and patient. That night, he slept without dreams. No blood, no lavender, no doctor's face, blank and terrible. Just darkness, warm and still, and the sound of breathing from the other side of the room, where Hashke lay curled in his new bed. When Daniel woke, the sky was gray with pre-dawn light. He rose quietly, dressed, and made his way outside. Willow was already in the garden. She knelt at the far end of the rows, her back to him, her hands buried in the soil. She was planting something seeds from a cotton sack beside her, small and dark against her palm. The smell of fresh earth rose up around her. Daniel walked toward her. His cane sank into the soft earth with each step. His knee protested, but he kept going. She did not turn when he reached her, just kept working, her fingers pressing seeds into the ground, covering them with dirt, patting the surface smooth. You know how to plant, she asked. My ma taught me, long time ago. Good. She handed him the sack. We plant together. Daniel lowered himself to his knees. The soil was cool and damp beneath him. It smelled like rain and growth and possibility. He reached into the sack, pulled out a handful of seeds, pressed them into the earth, one by one, the way his mother had shown him when he was Hashke's age. Willow worked beside him. Their hands moved in rhythm, digging, planting, covering, patting. The sun crept over the ridge, painting the garden gold. Birds began to sing in the pines behind the house. Neither of them spoke. They did not need to. The seeds were in the ground. The work was done. Whatever grew from here, whatever came next, they would face it together. Daniel looked at the woman beside him, at her hands in the soil, at the light on her face, and for the first time in 15 years, he had a reason to build something. There is a quiet that comes after a story like this one. Not the silence of emptiness, but the kind that settles somewhere in the chest, heavy and tender all at once. The kind that stays with you for a while, even after the words have ended. Perhaps you know this feeling. Many of us do. We carry it in the small hours of the morning, in the pauses between conversations, in the way we sometimes look at the people we love and wonder if we have done enough, if we have said enough, if they know. Some of us have stood where Daniel stood on the edge of a decision that could cost us everything. Some of us have been Willow, waiting for someone to see us as more than what the world decided we were. Some of us have been Hashke, just hoping for a place to belong. These things do not need to be resolved. They do not need to be understood. They are allowed to simply rest, the way seeds rest in winter soil, patient, unhurried, waiting for their season. It is all right to sit with this a while longer. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for listening.